Discover the touching moment when my daughter-in-law exposed her hidden strength in our kitchen. As the sweet aroma of freshly baked pumpkin pies wafted through the air, Mary found solace in her suburban Ohio kitchen, now aglow with the warmth of family traditions. But this year, as Thanksgiving loomed closer, the atmosphere felt inexplicably heavy. Her son Jake's new wife, Sarah, a culinary arts graduate, seemed a step away from fully engaging in the kitchen ritual, the very heart of their family gatherings. It gnawed at Mary, igniting a swell of unease. Where pumpkin spice ought to evoke warmth, it instead lingered with a hint of tension. Despite Sarah's extensive training, Mary sensed a daunting wall between her and the family's kitchen, a barrier forged from insecurity. As the days passed, whispers of Jake's frustration echoed in Mary's mind. He yearned for the laughter and camaraderie they all enjoyed, but instead, uncertainty clung to Sarah like a shroud. The disappointment etched on Jake's face was a vivid reminder of her previous struggles. The years spent fighting for recognition as a teacher, in a world that too often underestimated her abilities. A tangle of loyalty and compassion made Mary's heart ache. She wouldn't repeat the mistakes of the past, not when family meant everything to her. At dinner, the tension peaked. "You never want to help in the kitchen." Jake's voice rose, echoing off the walls. Sarah's eyes flickered with hurt, but before she could reply, Mary felt like a silent guardian caught in the crossfire. Her instincts told her she should step in, but which side was correct? The anger from Jake felt familiar, while Sarah's vulnerability echoed her own past. Frozen, she watched the two of them. The anguish exposed in the argument darkened her kitchen, making it feel less like a sanctuary and more like a battlefield. As the clock ticked down to the night before Thanksgiving, while her meticulously planned dishes loomed like specters, Mary tried to balance her emotional turmoil. Cooking offered her a reprieve, yet questions gnawed at her. Could Sarah embrace her culinary talents and find her voice? Would this kitchen, her beloved refuge, ultimately become a source of conflict rather than comfort? Before she could ponder too long, a crash interrupted her thoughts. Sarah's breakdown. Alarmed, Mary rushed into the kitchen. There she found Sarah crumpled on the floor, overwhelmed by self-doubt, her facade shattered. "I thought I could do it." Sarah's words tumbled amid sobs, voicing fears Mary recognized all too well. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In that vulnerable moment, they both unearthed hidden truths. Mary spoke about her battles, how she broke through barriers. As Sarah opened up about her fears of never fulfilling her role, both as a wife and a cook, the air thickened with possibility. Yet, uncertainty loomed. Could this revelation spark a change? Or would old fears resurface, overshadowing their tentative bond? The kitchen, once a haven of warmth, now crackled with unresolved tension, leaving Mary anxious about the future of their family and Sarah's journey towards self-acceptance. Had they merely stoked the flames, or were they on the brink of igniting a transformation? Mary's breath caught in her throat as she crouched beside Sarah. The young woman's sobs echoed in the once familiar warmth of the kitchen, and as Mary reached out a hand, it felt like reaching into the depths of her own past. "Sarah," she said softly, invoking a gentleness she hoped would cut through the tumult of emotions swirling around them. "It's okay. You're not alone in this." The reality of her words settled heavily in the air. Was it truly okay? As Sarah glanced up, her eyes reflected a cocktail of confusion and despair. "But I should be better. I have the training. I'm supposed to know how to do this. Everyone expects me to be the perfect wife, the perfect cook. Mary felt an unexpected pang of recognition. How many times had she battled similar expectations throughout her own life? The glimpses of fleeting success in the classroom often felt overshadowed by the constant imperative to please others. You know, I never felt perfect either. Teaching challenged me for years. I faced doubts from parents and colleagues. I had to carve my own path. A flicker of understanding crossed Sarah's face, but the weight of expectation still hung between them. I thought I could easily create the same warmth you always bring to the holidays, Sarah confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. But I feel like I'm failing. Everyone struggles, especially when they're trying to meet expectations. You need to find your own rhythm, your own voice in this kitchen. Though her words attempted to convey wisdom, Mary could sense the hairline fracture beneath Sarah's facade of competence, one that reminded her of her early days in teaching, filled with disillusionment. Mary carefully selected her next words, feeling the tension shifting. Let's cook together. Not as a master and a novice, but as allies. I can share my perspective, and you can show me yours. Sarah hesitated, wiping tears from her cheeks. Hesitation curled around the edges of Mary's heart, suffused with both hope and uncertainty. Would stepping beyond their roles allow them to forge a new connection? Combat anxiety with collaboration? With a deep breath, Sarah rose from the floor. Okay, let's try, she said tentatively, uncertainty lacing her voice but punctuated by an ember of determination. As the minutes passed, the kitchen transformed back into a place of creation. Mary and Sarah found themselves moving in tandem, chopping, stirring, blending ingredients and memories, letting laughter punctuate their delicate conversation. Despite Mary's years of experience, she recognized a spark of innovation in Sarah's approach. What if we add a hint of nutmeg? Sarah asked, her uncertainty slipping away with each moment they spent together. Mary felt a smile grow. This was the empowerment she longed for her daughter-in-law to discover. With each addition to the pie filling, Sarah seemed to reclaim a piece of herself lost in familial expectations. Trust yourself, Mary offered. You have what it takes. By the end of the evening, as the pies began to cool, an unspoken alliance blossomed between them. The kitchen buzzed with a different energy, one no longer tainted by frustrations or fears. As Mary ushered the last pie into the oven, she caught sight of Sarah's tired but triumphant smile. Yet even amidst this newfound camaraderie, the question lingered like the aroma of nutmeg in the air. Could this alliance withstand the unrelenting scrutiny of family expectations? As both women exchanged glances, the uncertainty loomed, teasing the edges of Mary's satisfaction. Perhaps this brief moment of triumph wouldn't hold against the outside forces governing their family dynamics. The reality of their challenge would soon resurface. Yet Mary felt a quiet resolve bubbling within her. The sound of laughter from the living room echoed, intertwined with fragrant memories. And yet Mary sensed that another revelation awaited just beneath the surface, promising to complicate what they had just begun to mend. The moment hung in the balance, teasing the question. Would this breakthrough lead to a new form of vulnerability? Or would it send them spiraling into deeper conflicts? Mary returned to the kitchen the next morning, the air still redolent with the lingering warmth of yesterday's baking. She felt a new rhythm to her actions, a determined step that resonated with the collaboration she had shared with Sarah. Yet each reminder of that afternoon ignited a flicker of concern. Was it enough to merely bond over baking? What about when the scrutiny from their family returned, demanding perfection? As she arranged yesterday's pies for the family dinner that evening, Mary's mind wandered. Was this a fleeting triumph? Or had it stirred something deeper in Sarah? That question stirred a familiar unease in her own chest. Accepting imperfections seemed challenging. So often, her own career had felt defined by the pressure to succeed in the eyes of others. Teaching was a world where each success was publicly measured, each failure scrutinized. Just as she set the last pie on the counter, the doorbell chimed, snapping her from her thoughts. Mary carefully wiped her hands on her apron before answering the door. Standing there was her son, Jacob, looking back at her with a blend of enthusiasm and the same anxiety she felt. "Hey, Mom, are you ready for the family dinner? Sarah's super excited." At the mention of Sarah's excitement, Mary could only muster a nod. She smiled up at Jacob, who was clearly oblivious to the weight of the moment. "Yes, it should be fun," she replied, feeling the pressure settle like a heavy blanket on her shoulders. Jacob walked in and began helping set the table, filling the silence with light-hearted banter. Mary listened, but her thoughts wandered to how she could make tonight different. While she appreciated Jacob's support, part of her recognized that he still expected a flawless dinner, an expectation charged with her own long-standing anxiety. In the hours leading up to dinner, Sarah joined them, and Mary noted the shift in her demeanor. The young woman appeared more animated, a hint of pride coloring her face as she shared ideas on how to present the meal. "What if we lay out the pies with some fresh herbs? It'll look more inviting," she suggested. Mary felt a surge of pride. This was the Sarah that had been hidden beneath layers of anxiety. "You've really hit the nail on the head," Mary exclaimed, feeling a swell of hope. Yet just beneath the surface, apprehension stirred within her. What if Sarah's confidence faltered in front of the family? She recalled her earlier experiences, their harsh judgments whispered like shadows. The stakes felt high. As dinner drew near, she paced the kitchen, struggling to suppress her fears. What if their small victories were dashed against the hard wall of expectations? She weighed the excitement of this newfound bond against the reality of family dynamics. Whether this collaboration would endure or crumble under scrutiny. The dinner table filled with familiar faces, laughter penetrating the previously quiet air. Each cheer echoed moments of connection, but Mary felt tense as the meal unfolded. Would the compliments reflect true appreciation, or merely the facade of politeness? When expectations inevitably emerged, how would Sarah maintain her newfound voice? Then, just as the evening settled into a comfortable rhythm, Mary realized the moment of truth had arrived. As the last pie was served, she felt the weight of anticipation, the uncertainty whether this unsteady alliance could withstand the examination of family eyes. Could they both weather the storm looming on the horizon? The evening was still young, but Mary felt a quickening pulse of tension. The time had come to face those unspoken challenges clinging to their interactions, and she wouldn't be able to avert her gaze much longer. Words hung heavy in the air, ready to plunge into depths they had yet to explore. The evening unfolded slowly, punctuated by careful laughter and forced pleasantries. When Mary glanced at Sarah, seated at the table with a tentative smile, she felt a surge of protectiveness. It wasn't just a dinner. It was a test. Everyone moved through the motions, and yet beneath the surface, a tension electrified the air. With her heart pounding, Mary took a deep breath and focused on the pies. Cinnamon and apple mingled alluringly, a reminder of yesterday's promise. But in her mind, she could already hear the judgment creeping in. Would they notice the slight unevenness in the crusts, or the way the pie fillings overflowed? Perfection paralyzed her, feeding her doubts. As dinner progressed, Jacob initiated a conversation about his schoolwork. "Can you believe I might get a scholarship?" he exclaimed, clearly caught up in his excitement. His proclamation drew applause, but Mary's attention shifted back to Sarah. Would she share in the celebration or retreat into her shell in the face of such scrutiny? "Of course you will," Sarah chimed in, her voice carrying a new confidence that surprised Mary. It was a small victory, but significant in the context of the evening. Imagine, just a few days ago, Sarah had hesitated to even voice her ideas. Now she was contributing, energized, and engaging. But then, Aunt Martha, with her clear-cut expectations, leaned forward, her gaze darting between the two younger women. "I've seen some of the recipes you've made, Sarah. Your baking is good, but you know, cooking is truly a matter of practice," she commented, her words heavy with implication. Mary sensed the current shift. Was this the moment when Sarah would shrink back under the weight of those expectations? Mary's mind raced. Should she intervene? Should she reinforce Sarah's courage or deflect the comment? Protecting Sarah meant confronting Aunt Martha, an act that felt daunting. The mingling of anxiety and maternal instinct churned in her stomach. Would backing Sarah mean risking her own standing in this family? To Mary's surprise, Sarah took a moment and then spoke up. "I understand what you mean, Aunt Martha, but I also think it's about creativity." The assertion hung in the air, bold and profound. Mary felt a swell of pride. Sarah was finding her voice, challenging the notion of perfection. Mary noticed Jacob looking at his aunt, puzzled. "Yeah, and Mom's teaching me about experimenting, not just following the rules," he chimed in, an unexpected echo of support. The connection felt fragile yet powerful, a thread linking them in pursuit of acceptance. As the tension in the room softened, Mary marveled at how Sarah was standing tall amid the expectations. In that moment, a kernel of hope nestled within Mary's heart. Could they reshape this narrative together? But just as the evening began to feel manageable, Mary's older brother chimed in from the far end of the table. "Let's not forget, the best pies are the ones that follow the family recipes down to the last detail. Traditions matter," he stated, his tone a blend of nostalgia and challenge. Each word was like a weight dropped, creeping into the delicate fabric they were weaving. Mary's breath caught, and a knot formed in her throat. Would Sarah's resolve hold or unravel beneath the weight of tradition? She felt a swirl of panic. They stood at the brink of a deeper conflict. In that charged moment, surrounded by family, Mary understood the importance of this evening wasn't merely in the baking. It was about building relationships, creating room for imperfection, and perhaps forging a new legacy together, one that didn't require perfection to be whole. As the dialogue floated around her, Mary found herself grappling with the gravity of the evening. This wasn't just a dinner. It was a confrontation of values, a chance for them to redefine what success truly meant. Could they solidify this alliance, or were they spinning toward another clash? The storm of change loomed closer, and as she looked at Sarah, Mary felt the weight of expectation shift once more. The conversation at the table had taken on a new intensity, and Mary's heart raced as she absorbed the ripple effects of her brother's intrusive remarks. She studied Sarah, who was visibly grappling with the weight of expectations. In that moment, Mary recognized the duality in her own emotions. Her desire to protect Sarah clashing with the innate need to uphold family traditions. "I think each piece carries a story," Sarah responded, her voice steadier now, but Mary saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "Maybe the way we bake doesn't need to be so rigid." The challenge was evident, but so was the vulnerability that lingered beneath Sarah's brave facade. Mary felt a tug at her heart. This was no longer just about baking. This was about reclaiming identity. The evening stretched on, punctuated by superficial vows of support and familial nostalgia. Mary caught her father's gaze from across the table, a knowing look that carried recognition of the unspoken battle being waged. She sensed he understood what was at stake, not merely the pies or the recipes, but the deeper implications of each generation's legacy. Tradition is a backup, but creativity is the leap we take. Jacob interjected again, youthful exuberance brimming in his words as he grasped his mother's vision of cooking as an art. Mary nodded, encouraged by her son's contribution. The shift in their dynamic was palpable. They were cultivating a shared ethos, one based on exploration rather than fear. Yet, Aunt Martha's critical nature hovered like a storm cloud, and Mary felt it tightening around them. "Perhaps we're losing sight of what made our family recipes special," she retorted, the authority in her tone cutting through the growing warmth in the air. The implication was clear. Innovation might lead to chaos and, ultimately, disappointment. Mary steeled herself. The battle wasn't merely for Sarah's validation, but for her ability to express a world that coexisted with tradition. "Aunt Martha," Mary said firmly, her voice carrying a weight that surprised even her. "There's beauty in adaptation. Our best memories are born from joyfully breaking the rules and finding our unique paths." She felt the shifting energy at the table, tipping slightly in their favor. This was more than a confrontation. It was a revelation. Mary could feel something beautiful brewing, a renewed understanding that defined their clan. Yet, as she spoke, she was acutely aware of the potential fallout from Aunt Martha's response. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with the raw emotion hanging between family members. Mary caught Sarah's eye, and they shared a fleeting moment of affirmation. It was in that singular glance that Mary determined she would embrace her role as a guide for Sarah, nurturing the courage she displayed amidst their family's quagmire of expectations. But the moment lingered, potent and unresolved. Aunt Martha, unyielding in her views, appeared ready to rebut, and Mary braced herself for the impending verbal storm. Would the fragile unity they crafted derail under the challenge of entrenched beliefs? Or could they find a way to coalesce around shared hope and purpose? All eyes turned to Aunt Martha. The impending moment buzzed with anticipation. Would the confrontation solidify their efforts, or would it lead to a fracture among them? As the tension pulsed, Mary felt the edges of her resolve harden. She knew the importance of this moment. She had to prepare not just for the fallout, but for the next step in their shared path. Would this be a defining battle for their family's future, or merely a skirmish undermined by unwarranted tradition? As she stood poised to face whatever may unfold, the question loomed. Were they ready to redefine their legacy once and for all? The weight of Aunt Martha's silence stretched across the table, creating an almost tangible barrier. Mary felt the pulsing beat of her heart echo in her ears. This moment was poised to alter the course of their family dynamics, yet she remained painfully aware of how tenuous their newfound unity was. Just as Mary opened her mouth to speak again, Aunt Martha leaned forward, her sharp gaze piercing through the collective tension. "Tradition isn't just nostalgia, Mary. It's the foundation of who we are. What will we become if we throw away what we've built?" There was a steely resolve in her voice, but beneath it lay the tremor of uncertainty, hinting at the cracks in her rigid beliefs. Mary's mind raced. Instead of retreating into a defensive stance or allowing her frustration to overtake her, she decided to address the root of Aunt Martha's fears. "What if," she began slowly, "we could celebrate our foundation, while also building upon it? Change doesn't negate the past. It honors it by allowing us to grow." Aunt Martha paused, analyzing Mary's words. Surrounding family members shifted in their seats, feelings of anticipation mingling with anxiety. Mary took a breath, feeling the heat of expectation building within her. She realized she was not merely arguing against tradition, she was advocating for the vibrant evolution of their family identity. "Remember the time we experimented with that chocolate orange tart?" Jacob chimed in suddenly, recalling a moment when creation had triumphed over rigidity. "It was a disaster, but it was also fun. And the next time, we had an amazing pie, right? It was like we were writing our own story." The recollection sparked a flicker of remembrance in the faces around the table. Mary seized on that spark, observing how the shared story changed the energy in the room. Innovation doesn't erase memory. Instead, it creates new ones. Sarah, her eyes glistening with realization, spoke up. "And each new dish we create can still carry the essence of our family's love and traditions. It can tell different stories." Her voice was resolute, an undercurrent of strength emerging as she clung to the familial bond they all shared. Mary's heart swelled with pride, both for Sarah's courage and for their collective stand against a daunting legacy. The conversation had taken a turn, and now Aunt Martha was left with the burden of her stubbornness. Aunt Martha looked deeply contemplative, confronting her own beliefs for perhaps the first time. Mary could see the moment of reflection wash over her aunt's face, caught between her past and the potential for new beginnings. This confrontation was not just a battle. It was a pivotal moment that could reshape their family's legacy. Yet just as the air began to clear and a sense of mutual understanding blossomed, Aunt Martha's voice sliced through like a knife. Understanding is all well and good, but how do you propose we implement these changes? What do you suggest we replace our beloved traditions with? That question hung heavily in the air, drawing Mary back to her own internal conflict. Could she find a way to integrate innovation without diminishing the beloved aspects of their shared history? She realized that the conversation was only beginning, and the conundrum of balance lay ahead. Mary's determination sparked anew. She was ready not just for further discussions, but to lead them toward tangible resolutions. Recipes that would weave past and present into a shared fabric of family life. As she prepared her response, a thought flickered in her mind. This was just the start of a multi-layered journey, one that would redefine what it meant to be a family. The real work lay ahead, and her spirit ignited with possibility. In this moment of reflection, she was acutely aware of the next challenge awaiting them. Would they embrace the change with open hearts, or would they let tradition stifle their growth? The answer was just beginning to unfurl. Mary hesitated, feeling the weight of Aunt Martha's question. The anticipation in the kitchen was palpable. It seemed to thrum with unspoken possibilities. Mary's mind was racing, and as she attempted to steady her thoughts, the challenge before her crystallized. This wasn't just about proposing a new recipe. It entailed reimagining the very essence of what the family table could represent. "I think," she began, her voice steady despite the anxiety churning within, "we could explore a weekly theme dinner. Each week we could choose a different cuisine or story that honors various cultures or times in our family's history, while still keeping core components intact. For instance, we could have a traditional Italian night with a modern twist. Maybe lasagna, but with roasted veggies for a healthier flair." Aunt Martha's brow furrowed, skepticism written across her face. "What does that have to do with our roots?" "Everything," Mary asserted, feeling the pulse of her own unyielding determination. She thought of her mother's stories while making pie crust in their cramped kitchen as a child, how each rustic dish had a unique story layered within it. "We gain a deeper understanding of our traditions when we add new flavors to them. Our heritage can be a living part of our experiences, rather than a stagnant memorial." As Mary spoke, ideas began forming in her mind, breaths of potential swirling around the room. She envisioned her family gathered around the table, not just to eat, but to engage in shared creativity, discussing which flavors complemented the memories and which stories resonated with their lives now. Jacob chimed in again, enthusiasm spilling into his words. "Or we could have a family vote on which recipes to try. It gives everyone a voice and creates something fresh." The notion sparked a light in several faces at the table. Mary felt a flicker of hope that perhaps they were beginning to break down the wall of resistance that Aunt Martha had built. But Aunt Martha remained unmoved, crossing her arms. "Destabilizing our traditions can cause more harm than good, Mary. It's easy to get lost in novelty." Mary took a breath, grounding herself. Aunt Martha's caution echoed her own fears. Could she truly lead this family into the unknown, and still retain the love that made every meal meaningful? She understood that the plan she was formulating needed careful deliberation and a protective heart for the memories embedded in their collective history. "I recognize the value of tradition, but isn't the heart of a family meal all about connection?" Mary's question hung in the air, an invitation to reflect. "The way we connect might evolve, but the love present in every bite, and each shared laugh, can both honor tradition and welcome innovation. Every gaze around the table began to shift, curiosity mingling with defiance. The seed of doubt that lay in Aunt Martha's heart was visibly churning as they played with the concept of change. Mary felt an exhilarating rush surge through her. The more she articulated her vision, the more momentum she gained, awakening her sense of purpose. How had she, until this moment, imposed limits on herself? The question didn't just belong to Aunt Martha anymore, but was starting to resonate in the depth of her own identity. Mary sensed her own evolution materializing. She wasn't just advocating for change in the family dynamic, but for herself as well. She was moving into a role as a leader, not just through discussion, but through actionable changes that would manifest, not only in mundane meals, but across all aspects of her life. As the conversation continued to twist and turn among the family, Mary realized she was at a critical juncture. Would she summon the audacity and resolve required to amplify her voice, guiding Aunt Martha and the family harmoniously into this new chapter? Aunt Martha's steely gaze softened slightly, the tiniest crack in her armor appearing. The room buzzed with a warmth that suggested hope, but uncertainty loomed like a shadow. Mary knew as she prepared to consolidate her thoughts that this challenge was only the beginning. The moment of decisive action awaited her. But would the family surrender to change, or would they cling to established practices? With this question lingering, Mary pushed her resolve to the forefront and maneuvered her words, ready to face the critical confrontation that would determine their path forward. The kitchen, once a stage of routine and predictability, now simmered with uncharted potential. Mary exchanged glances with Jacob, who seemed to hold the spirit of collaboration in his eyes, bridging the gap between his mother and grandmother. Despite Aunt Martha's skepticism, the air felt lighter, as if ready to embrace the unexpected. "I see what you're saying, Mary," Jacob said. "But if we introduce these new ideas, how do we ensure the traditional recipes don't get lost?" The question hung heavily, yet it flickered to life another crucial conversation. A dance between the old and the new. Mary's heart raced. Her instincts told her that each meal could tell a deeper story. Perhaps we can preserve the essence of the traditional dishes while adding our own touch to them. We could even create a family cookbook, with sections dedicated to those treasured recipes alongside our modern adaptations. It would celebrate our history and creativity side by side. Aunt Martha's skepticism turned to contemplation, a crack in her emotional wall widening further. Yet, doubt remained buried beneath layers of pride. "But a cookbook? Isn't that minimizing what the traditions really mean?" Mary leaned forward, recalling the countless moments spent with her mother, piecing together family history one recipe at a time. "No, Aunt Martha. It's about celebrating everything, honoring those recipes while inviting new stories to be part of our culinary legacy. We're not just eating, we are creating memories together." The room simmered with anticipation. Eyes flipped from Aunt Martha to Mary, seeking clarity with unspoken questions. This was no longer just about recipes. It was about asserting her place within the fabric of her family. Aunt Martha looked torn, wrestling with her internal dialogues. This was no small shift. It threatened the very foundation of what she understood family meals to embody. Mary noted her expression, a potent mix of fear and contemplation. "Let's have a test run," Mary proposed, her voice firm yet understanding. "A single night where we try this new style. If it feels wrong, we can stop it. But if it feels right..." She let the thought hang, the promise of possibility glowing in the kitchen's dim light. Aunt Martha's body relaxed just a fraction. "You want to put my lasagna against roasted vegetables?" "No," Mary smiled, sensing the breakthrough. "I want to elevate your lasagna with roasted vegetables. Let it become a part of our evolution." The notion of the experiment grounded Aunt Martha momentarily, the allure of a tangible outcome countering her instinctive resistance. It was a perilous venture. The dish she loved deeply was now linked to uncertainty. Jacob grinned, sensing the shift in atmosphere and the seeds of collaboration taking root. I'll handle the sourcing of the ingredients. Let's even see if Grandma has other ideas from her own cooking adventures. Cooking adventures? Aunt Martha lifted an eyebrow, intrigued yet cautious. Yes. Mary felt the energy ballooning at the table. Perhaps those stories might find their way into our shared experiences. Aunt Martha sighed heavily. You kids and your fancy ideas. Something tells me it won't be as simple as it sounds. A wave of frustration washed over Mary, but she channeled it into resolve. Aunt Martha was stubborn, yet she understood the importance of tenacity. I know it won't be easy, she confessed. Each change might set off waves of discomfort. But maybe allowing ourselves to wade through it could prove fruitful. At that moment, Mary felt a newfound determination bloom within her. Leading her family into the unknown required courage. She needed to grasp the reins firmly, balancing respect for tradition with the promise of exploration. As Aunt Martha relented into thought, Mary sensed the beginning of transformation, not just in the recipe, but in her own self-discovery as a leader. She was confronting not just her aunt, but the unspoken limits she had accepted. The spark ignited, illuminating paths forward that she had yet to explore. The meal, once transient, could now become an expressive canvas of their realities and imaginations. But somewhere, nestled within the warm glow illuminated by flickering flames, buried questions lurked. Would Aunt Martha yield fully, or would tradition reign supreme, shackling their ambitions before they ever took flight? Mary tightened her resolve, ready to navigate the tumultuous waves ahead. Little did she know, as she coordinated her thoughts with her family's reactions, that the real confrontation lay ahead. One that would challenge not only her family dynamics, but her own perception of identity and leadership. And so, the stage was set for the fateful dinner. It would require all her courage to embrace the unknown. Would her vision be embraced or shattered by the weight of expectations? The moment loomed just beyond the horizon, fraught with potential upheaval. The day of the test run arrived, and anticipation buzzed like gnats in the kitchen air. Mary stood at the counter, mentally revisiting her plan while her fingers worked through the motions of chopping vegetables. Today was not just about dinner. It was a test of her convictions and a chance to lay affirmative groundwork for her vision. With each slice, she felt a small bit of anxiety transform into determination. If she could integrate the new into Aunt Martha's layers of love, perhaps it would soften the transition for the older woman, whose pride was deeply entrenched in tradition. As she placed the diced vegetables in a bowl, Jacob entered with an array of ingredients, his enthusiasm brightening the blue-tinted kitchen. I found some heirloom tomatoes and basil from that little organic market down the street. A perfect pairing for the roasted vegetables. Mary's heart leapt at his support, reminding her of how collaboration could harness disparate energies into something cohesive. They worked side by side, molding ingredients into a dynamic combination of their culinary heritage and personal innovation. But there was still the specter of Aunt Martha hovering over them. Each time Mary caught sight of the older woman, pacing and occasionally peering at the changing landscape of the kitchen, she felt her own resolve waver. Martha's legacy wasn't an abstraction. It was tangible, woven into the fabric of their meals and memories. Just don't forget you're stirring the sauce too much, Aunt Martha cautioned from the sidelines, her tone one of propriety rather than critique. But Mary felt the weight of her scrutiny. That'll ruin the flavor. Mary bit her tongue to suppress the impulse to defend her methods. Instead, she took a breath and smiled. I appreciate the insight, Aunt Martha. I want to blend techniques today. Let's see if it offers a different perspective on flavor. Aunt Martha's eyebrows narrowed slightly, but she stayed silent, her watchful gaze still carrying an air of skepticism that penetrated the burgeoning positivity. As they moved deeper into dinner preparation, Mary felt a surge of hope as savory scents began to fill the air, intertwining with the memories of meals long past. But self-doubt flickered in the back of her mind, whispering that perhaps she was overstepping boundaries in the family legacy. Did she possess the leadership qualities needed to nurture growth without losing their roots? With the table set and the oven humming, Mary turned her attention to plating. It was pivotal that each dish honored the past, while confirming her place in the family narrative. "Grandma, could you tell us the story behind your lasagna? I'm curious how it became a family favorite," she prodded, hoping to engage Martha in the process. Aunt Martha hesitated, but curiosity broke through the wall of reticence. "Well, your mother used to eat every single bite. It was comfort food, a taste of home." Mary nodded, taking in the enormity of that sentiment. Yet she could see the tension in Aunt Martha's shoulders, a tightening that suggested resistance to change. Grandma's memories were vital, but did they allow space for her growth as well? "Today isn't about replacing that dish, but enhancing it," Mary replied gently. "It's about remembering the love, but also discovering new experiences." As the family gathered around the table, the moment felt fragile, like the tension before a brittle glass could shatter. Each face reflected both excitement and apprehension, their collective breaths held as they prepared to indulge in something unfamiliar. Mary lifted her fork and paused, her heartbeat quickening. Would Aunt Martha accept this new expression of their culinary tradition, or would the old ways shout louder and drown out her earnest attempt at innovation? With one last look at her family and their mixed expressions, Mary braced herself, knowing that this evening could either unlock doors or close them tightly, cementing the divide between past and present. The moment was at hand. Would transformation prevail? Or would the comfort of tradition hold them back? The lights flickered, momentarily catching Mary off guard. Just then, the door swung open, revealing unexpected guests, close family friends with a penchant for culinary adventure. An untimely visit that might just complicate everything, or invigorate their mission. As the unexpected guests settled into the dining room, Mary felt a whirlwind of emotions. The familiar faces were a surprise, but could provide the perfect distraction from the pressure of tonight's presentation. They were genuine in their love for food and exploration, which might lighten the weight of expectations already fraught within her hearts. "Surprise! We brought a bottle of wine to celebrate. Hope you didn't mind us dropping by," one of them exclaimed, igniting a spark of warmth that began to dissolve Mary's earlier anxiety. "Not at all. You're just in time." Mary found herself smiling, each word infused with a surprising confidence as she introduced them to the family. In that moment, she realized the ebb and flow of familial roles ripples across broader connections. This wasn't merely a test for Sarah or a challenge to Aunt Martha. It was an occasion for the entire family to redefine how they interacted with both food and each other. The guests brought a fresh energy that invigorated the room. They admired the ingredients, asked about the stories behind them, and engaged everyone in conversations that naturally branched into laughter and curiosity. As plates filled with Mary's roasted vegetable medley and Aunt Martha's cherished lasagna made their way to the table, the spirit shifted. Mary looked at Sarah, who seemed buoyed by the infectious enthusiasm. She had transformed from a poised but nervous newcomer into a significant part of this family tapestry. With every laugh shared and story recounted, Sarah participated with newfound confidence, chiming in eagerly, defending her experimental creations like a proud chef, introducing a novel recipe. Aunt Martha, initially cautious, began to lean into the conversations. "Remember," and "in my day," echoed throughout the table. But they were often met with stories of humor and resilience from Mary, Jacob, and even Sarah. And then, with the mention of family traditions, Mary found herself stepping back to observe the conversations unfold, and in doing so, realized they weren't merely discussing the recipes anymore. They were sharing experiences, revealing vulnerabilities, and embracing the idea of adaptability in a changing world. Do you remember that one time when Grandma tried to shape pasta by hand, and we ended up with a whole spaghetti wall? Jacob said, laughter in his voice as he encouraged everyone to share their cooking mishaps. This was the moment. It transcended mere recipes, evolving into a rich dialogue that honored the old, yet welcomed the new. Mary felt her heart swell with pride and fulfillment as she watched Aunt Martha's rigid defenses soften amidst the buoyancy filling the room. A wave of hope washed over her. Every word, every shared laugh felt like a step toward cultivating a family culture that was both inclusive and vibrant. By the time dessert approached, Mary had crossed a line she'd once deemed uncrossable. The new narratives being woven into the evening overshadowed rigid adherence to tradition. This was progress, and she was at the helm guiding it. "Sarah, can you explain how you enhanced the apple pie? I'm quite curious," one of the guests prompted, an admiration evident in their voice that made Sarah beam brightly with pride. "Well," she began, her voice steady, "I used Grandma's base but added a twist of cinnamon and a dash of orange zest for freshness while baking. That combination just sings." As she spoke, the transition felt tangible. Not merely a culinary adjustment, but a personal triumph as well. Here was the Sarah Mary had longed to see, the embodiment of strength and creativity, fully contributing to this family dynamic. Mary took a moment to absorb it all, reflecting on how each conversation, each bite, and each shared laugh melded together, becoming representative of the empowering journey they had undertaken. Aunt Martha, sitting near the center, occasionally looked over, her eyes betraying a hint of approval. A rare shift for her, but one that meant the world to Mary. The tension that had once threatened to fracture relationships felt eerily distant. Instead, it was replaced with an atmosphere of celebration, unity, and authenticity. Mary recognized that it was not just the food that had transformed that evening, but the very foundation of their family's legacy. As the dinner came to a close and laughter echoed around the table, Mary realized she had not only navigated the complexities of her family's dynamics, but she had led them to embrace a vision of what could be. A fluid identity, defined by love, growth, and acceptance. She leaned back, allowing gratitude to wash over her. In accepting imperfections, they had collectively achieved something profound. The true essence of family was not rigid adherence to tradition, but the strength found within open hearts and minds. She glanced at Sarah, whose joy radiated through the room. They both shared a meaningful smile, weaving an unspoken bond forged in vulnerability and triumph. No longer was this a kitchen defined by expectations, but rather a sanctuary for exploration and connection. And as the last slice of pie was served, Mary felt a wave of accomplishment wash over her. Here in this cozy Ohio kitchen, filled with friends, family, laughter, and love, she had not only achieved confidence in her own voice, but empowered others to find theirs. A journey that would transcend time and tradition. This moment was a turning point, one that would ripple through their relationships long after the last bite was taken. Feeling fulfilled, Mary embraced her role, confident in her ability to foster a legacy not just of culinary prowess, but of mutual respect, innovation, and unyielding love. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the journey of personal overcoming stories. Don't wait even one more second to share.